The third chapter of the Devorah from the Ramak, and we're deep in the ocean of Chokhmah, in the Yam of Chokhmah, of the Midah of Chokhmah. First two chapters we were discussing Keter, now we're in Chokhmah, and I think we've been doing it for 2 weeks now. I can't remember now. I can't remember one or two. I think 2 weeks, and just to remind ourselves, we're in a list of I think four or five different pilot, four or five different aspects or actions of chokhmah, klape mata, facing downwards. Remember, we said that chokhmah, which is the midah right after keter, and kulam chokhmah sita. The whole world was created really with chokhmah. Hashem's wisdom is spread out over all the world. All you have to look into is anything, whether you're looking at there's a book a friend of mine gave me once, a book, one of those flip books, that goes real fast, and it was a picture from it was a picture, maybe you guys have seen this, from like way out in outer space, and you just see stars and galaxies, and then the next one it goes incrementally, like closer, like down. Okay. I don't know how many kilometers or miles per picture, but each one gets closer, and then finally, eventually, you see our galaxy, and you see Earth, and then you go down, and then it goes into a city, into the what am I calling? I forget what neighborhood, and then it goes into a park, and then it goes into a person who's laying down on the grass, and then it goes onto his face, and then it goes into his cells, into the cellular level. So you do it like real quick. You flip it, so it's really cool. So it doesn't matter where you look, on the macro level, on the micro level, you find Hashem's chokhmah in this world. This world was created with chokhmah. So we said that, but of course we're trying to learn in this Sefer. If we wanted to learn in Kabbalah about the Eser Sefirot, so there's no shortage of Sfarim that are all talking about the esoteric elements of the Sefirot, which all of them are supposed to be converted into Avodat Hashem, like we said a few times, that the only reason why these things are revealed to us is so that we can use them to be better Jews, to be better servants of God. So, but in Tomer Devorah is specifically talking about our midot and our actions, how to behave in these ways, how to take the lessons of these midot, and when we do that, we become the chariot, we become the resting place for that midah of Hashem. A revelation of Hashem's chokhmah comes in the world through you. So how do we do that? So we said that chokhmah has two positions. One is facing upwards towards Keter, to receive, right? And that's us when we are in communion and unity with Hashem, with Dveikut, moments of tefillah, moments of learning Torah, where we're the receptacle, we're receiving the chokhmah, and then there's the second putting, the second facing, which is facing downwards, to give chokhmah to others. Right, and that's really the main part of this parak. Even though I've stressed a few times that it's important not to underestimate and not to minimize that aspect in your own lives of taking the time to receive chokhmah and to fill yourself up with that closeness with Hashem. Right, a couple of minutes of connection with Hashem, of true dveikus, can fill up your tank for a very long time. And really, we want to be pouring Hashem's chokhmah into the world, but we have to be filled receptacle ourselves before we can really do that. And so we have to keep that in balance. But in any event, we've been the first of the five elements that are actions that the Ramak has taught us was one. The first one is to teach chokhmah, to spread wisdom, and to teach chokhmah according to the ability of all the recipients. If you're teaching a child, if you're teaching someone who's wiser, or someone that older, right? To be able to, but to desire to spread wisdom in the world, not to keep it for yourself. And the second one is to liot mashgiach alako, to be aware and present and focused on everything, to be looking at everything, cognizant of what's going on in the world, but not just so you can be aware and well informed, right? But you're looking with an intention. The intention is to be able to give good. Where can I bring good into this picture, right? And you might remember that one thing he said that we stressed, that even if you're not a teacher of wisdom, you're not a whatever it is, you're not a person who knows how to speak in that way, or you feel like you're not able to do that, but to think good thoughts about people, right? You could be thinking good thoughts and having good intentions. I think we said that once in this year, a story from Rav Yerucham Levovitz, who was the famous mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva, a very, very famous, legendary tzaddik. He lived in Poland, in Russia, Lita, and he and they say that when he would sit in front of his window that faced the street, Stam was just sitting in his, they didn't have like a bunch of rooms like we have today in houses, but his window faced the street, and people would be walking by. He would just be sitting there. He would just talk. I wish you good. I wish you well. It should be good for you. Bless you. He'd be sending blessings through the window. They didn't hear him. They didn't even see him, right? But that's exactly what we're saying here. I think good thoughts. The third one is to give life, and the Ramak said so beautifully. Maybe it's just one sentence, and I think we'll do it again real quick, just because some things are so sweet. You have to go over them and over. You notice when we sing. I don't know if this is like this in other I don't know, in other places. Certainly in pop music, it's not really like this so much. But in a Jewish song, a lot of times we take one pasuk or one sentence and we just say it over and over and over and over and over, right? I don't know. Maybe it's like that in other cultures also. I don't know. But the idea is that it's so we're it's so sacred. It's so precious to us. We're cherishing it. One more time, another time. I don't want to let go of it, right? I'm davuk to it. I'm attached to it, right? So sometimes same thing. That Rav, you guys have heard of Rav Hyman from Volozhin, famous student of the Vilna Gaon. We learned a piece once in this year from his Sefer, Nefesh Chaim. He had a brother who passed away at a younger age. He was a young adult, but Rav Chaim Volozhin was considered. He's like the father of the Lithuanian yeshiva world. He started the first yeshiva in Lita, and it's in its current form. And he said that his brother was much bigger than him. That's what he said about his brother, and they called him Rav Zalman Volozhin. And Rav Zalman Volozhin said that if it wasn't a mitzvah to learn the entire Torah, so I would spend my entire life just on one Mishnah, which is, we can't even imagine spending like just 1 week on one Mishnah, right? Right. So, but sometimes things are so sweet and so deep that you have to just go over them again. So again, here we go. Another peula, another action of chokhmah is that it gives life to everything. Just like the pasuk says, chokhmah gives life to those who have it, right? When you've got wisdom, so it gives you energy, right? So too, but not just for you, when you spread it. So too, if you want to bring that chokhmah in the world, that peula, so you should be teaching life and spreading life to the world. Give people vitality, right? How can you do that? How do you give life to others? What do you guys say?
Help. Give.
Help, you said?
Help, yeah.
Help,
yeah.
Right. Help people, right?
If you feel like you're in a good mood and and you have something to share it as best as you can. I remember I heard once somebody say, do it with a passion or don't do it at all. So if you really feel like you're connected with who you are, give of yourself to other people so they can feel who you are. And it makes them feel like they can be themselves also.
Nice.
Like confidence
Nice.
kind of thing.
Give over with a neshama. Right. Yeah, and also everybody has something special, something that they're passionate about, right? When the person, when they're kind of like bored about certain subjects or whatever, or they're trying not to be, but they are, and then you finally strike that one subject that really touches their heart, and all of a sudden they come to life, right? So if you find that place inside of yourself and spread that to others, and also find that place in others, right? Take an interest in what they're doing. Give them life, right? If someone is sad, someone's in depression or whatever, try to find the place that they still have a little bit of juice in their life, a little bit of vitality. Maybe it's dormant right now, but if you talk about it and you kind of bring it out, try to plug them back into it, right? I have a friend who was in a total depression once, and and I wasn't able to. I was trying all my tricks, I pulled out my toolbox, and I just was not successful. And I told another friend of ours who lived in the neighborhood, and he said, "What? Where is he?" I said, "He's been in bed for like 2 weeks. He hasn't been coming to davening." And he said, he put whatever he was doing, he put down right then. He walked to his house. He goes in the house. He said to his wife, "Where is he?" He's in bed. Walks in the bedroom. He said, put your clothes on. We're going right now. We're going for a walk. Guy hadn't been out of his bed in 2 weeks, right? So, but he did it. He was forceful enough. He put on his clothes and went for a walk. He brought the guy back to life. Now, Baruch Hashem, he's working, full-time job. He's got a lot of simcha in his life. He's flowing. He's back in the flow of things, right? So, you have to find the way in how to give life to people, right? V'gorem lehem chayei olam hazeh. Now the Ramak says, and you should give them life in this world. You should cause them life in this world. Feed them, give them a gishmak. Sing a niggin with them, whatever it is, right? Give them physical life, v'chayei olam haba, and also try to push them also and give them life in the world to come, meaning spiritual life. Umamtzi lehem chaim. You have to create for them life, right? It's like you light their candle, right? They don't have any light in themselves. You have to light it for them. V'zeh I love this sentence. I said this sentence over and over. You should be just flowing life to everything. Everywhere you go, you should be trying to make it more alive, right? It's a beautiful vision for us to carry in our head, a beautiful mission. So that's where we got up to last week. And now this week, the Ramak is going to talk about the last two pu'ulos, the last two functions of Chokhmah. This is v'od, another one. A Chokhmah av lechol hanimtzaot. Just like Chokhmah is the father of all creations, meaning Keter, like we said, is beyond our scope, beyond our ability to, right? We just have few aspects of it. That's why we don't have the 13 attributes of wisdom, the 13 attributes of Bina, we have the 13 attributes of Keter, because Keter is something that we can't really fully grasp. But these 13 attributes, we can have a little bit of an understanding to whatever level we can, right? But Chokhmah is ultimately the beginning of the creation. It's the first spark. Like you guys remember, we said that Chokhmah is like that first spark of a thought. Bina, contemplation, expands it, understands it, right? You start to give it a little bit of a picture, a little bit of a structure, right? And then the Midas, it starts to actually take form, right? But Chokhmah is the beginning. So it's like the father of all creations, right? So he says, Kedichtiv, ma rabu ma'asecha Hashem, how wondrous, how great are your creations, Hashem. Kulam b'chokhmah asita, all of them you've made with chokhmah. Even if something is with gvura, something with chesed, something with tiferet, whatever it is, whatever thing is in this world, it was made with chokhmah originally, right? Vehen chayim u'mitkaimim misham. So all of them really get their sustenance and their livelihood from chokhmah, right? That's the beginning. That's the stream of existence, of life, of kiyum, of its very existence comes from there. So what are we supposed to do with that? Kach yehu av lekol yitzurav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So too, you should be the father of all of Hashem's creations, right? You take responsibility for them. That's the inyan here. Taking responsibility, feeling the connection, and taking responsibility. U'Yisrael ikar. And specifically, the main thing for you is to take to feel responsibility for Am Yisrael, right? I just read a story last night of the famous Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir, the biggest yeshiva in Israel. You guys have heard of the Mir Yeshiva, right? Yeah. Something like 8,000 students or something like that. And he was a very interesting person. Just Ramash Bekitzer. He grew up in America playing baseball and going to the Chicago Cubs but his uncle was a great Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva. When he was like 16, he came to Israel and he went to Yeshiva, and his uncle said, "This boy's got potential. It's my nephew, my great nephew." And he asked the mother if he could stay, and he came and he learned, and he became the Rosh Yeshiva, the biggest yeshiva in the world. He expanded it to become the biggest yeshiva. But and he had Parkinson's. He contracted Parkinson's disease in his 40s or something. And I don't know. Do you guys know about it? He wouldn't take any medication. There's Parkinson's. Most people don't have this reaction because they take medication against the pain, but he wouldn't take it because one of the side effects of the medicine is that it can make a person forget things. And he said if I forget even one halacha or one gemara, it's not worth it. And so for like 20 years, he suffered tremendous, crazy pain. And if you would have seen him, I saw him, he would shake. He would shake. It looked like he was dancing. His whole body would shake uncontrollably. He had no control of it. Sometimes he would be sitting in a chair and his body would just shake, and he'd jump and he'd fall on the ground. Right? And I remember seeing him at the Siyum HaShas, three Siyum HaShas ago. And he was standing up there shaking, Imagine this. Here's the Rosh Hashiva, this great Rosh Hashiva, right? And he was so sweet. Oh my goodness, there's nothing sweeter than in the world. All he talked about was how much, he said, you have to pass on to your children how sweet the Torah is, how delicious the Torah is. And yeah, that's what I remember from him. But anyway, there's a story in the yeshiva there that they the yeshiva has like 7 or 8 gigantic buildings down in Meir Shearim, and there's always a shortage of seats for people to learn in over there, and so he had in one of the Bate Midrash, he had the highest level students, and right next to them was a chabura, was a group of students who were like barely holding on to Judaism. They would show up sometimes at the end of the morning for 30 minutes, and sometimes not at all. So there wasn't enough seat for the high level level learners. So they wanted to sit in the chairs of the chabura of the weaker students. So the Rosh Chabura, the head of that group, the guys were complaining. We don't have a place to sit. He said, "Well, we can't sit here." The Rosh Hashiva said, "We can't. These are assigned for those bachur." So, but they were pressuring him, so he went to the Rosh Hashiva. So he said, Rav Nosson Tzvi said to him, he said, and what would happen if those boys come into the base medrash and they see that here these steigers, these real strong students are sitting in their chairs, and here they're coming into the base medrash, 11:30, 12 o'clock, and so they see someone sitting in their chair, they're going to turn around, they're not going to come and say to the highest level students, can you please move out of my chair? And what's going to happen? That means that morning they're not going to learn any Torah. So I said, but Rosh Hashiva anyway, they're not really coming so much. He said, but what am I going to tell their father if their father comes to me and said, my son could have learned Torah this morning and they didn't have a chair in the base medrash? What am I going to tell their father? So the student said, we can find some type of diplomatic, way of explaining it. It's a very reasonable thing. So the Rosh Hashiva, again, he was stared at him with a smile. He said, I'm their father. I'm their father. You can't say something diplomatic to me. I'm their father. Right? It's tearjerker, that story. You have a person, he claimed responsibility and fatherhood for 6,000 students in his yeshiva. Every single one. He had an open door policy, right? So he's a great example of how to fulfill this. But if we can't have our door be opened all the time and be such a resource for for 6,000 students at any given time, like the great ones among us, but at the very least we could try to shift ourselves a little bit to put ourselves in as opposed to being in a position of I'm just a stam person in this world, I'm especially here in Machon Meir, I'm a newcomer. These guys have been here for, how many generations, here I come, but I'm new. I'm responsible, I'm coming, let me just sit on the side that nobody should notice me. And, I'll get to learn a shir every now and again. I'll get to daven in the minyan. I'm happy to just be a part. So that's wonderful. But you also have responsibility. The Gemara says, Kol Yisrael arevim zeh b'zeh, zeh lezeh. Every single Jew is responsible for every single Jew. We're all mixed in with each other. And if we want to bring that chokhmah into the world, so we want to bring Hashem's chokhmah into the world, so we have to take on that stance of taking responsibility. Like a father. Shehena neshamot kedoshot, but especially to Yisrael, since they're the special holy souls, hatzulot misham, which are drawn from Hashem's the exalted world called Atzilus. Too deep for an explanation for the scope of this year. And you should always be seeking compassion and blessing. Always. Just like our exalted Father is always compassionate and loving and seeking to give us bracha in our life. Right? So too. Right? Very similar to what we said before, but here's more of the aspect of response. I'm responsible. If I don't do it, so who's going to do it? Right? And you should always daven for the difficulty that other Yidden are going through, right? You guys know when it says that whenever there's a communal difficulty that's happening, everybody has a responsibility to go daven with the community. Person shouldn't say, "No, I'm going to stay and learn," or "I'm doing my thing." It's not really I'm not personally being affected by it, so I don't really have to daven for it. right? We have a responsibility to daven for, and it says that if a person doesn't go daven with the tzar of the tzibur, so he's also not going to be answered with the salvation of the tzibur. Right? So it's very important to feel the pain of another yid and to daven for them. Kilu hayu banav mamish, as if they were your own children. B'ki'ilu hu yitzaram, like as if you created them. Right? This is your child. The story about the Rebbe Melech, the Melech, the Rebbe Melech Milizhensk, who one of the greatest Hasidic rabbis of all time, and him and his brother Reb Zusha, they put themselves into exile for a year. Every night slept in a different place, and which is a way to identify with the gullus of the Shechina, the exile of the Shechina. The Shechina is not in its place. We don't have Beis Hamikdash. We don't have the final redemption. So the Shechina is not really, Hashem's presence is not in its place. It's in exile. So too, a lot of Yidden in the old days would put themselves into exile, self-imposed exile. So when he was coming back, he came back to his city, and he was getting close to his house, and he had a son named Elazar, and he called him Laser, and he got close to his house, and he heard a baby crying. He was a baby at the time, and he said, "Oi, I hope it's not my Laser." And then he stopped in his tracks, and he said, "What? And that it should be somebody else's Laser? And somebody else's Laser is not also a Yiddish kid? It's also not a Jewish child." So he said, I didn't really reach my goal yet. And he turned back around. He went back into goals for another year. Right? And that's very difficult for us to achieve that, to love other children as if they're own. But we should try. We should try. This is because this is Hashem's desire. And this is you can learn this from what Moshe Rabbeinu said. You remember that Moshe Rabbeinu, one time Moshe was saying, "I can't handle it. It's too difficult for me with everything that they're doing." Did I give birth to this nation? That Moshe says to Hashem. That you're telling me, you're telling me to hold him in my arms, right? So what the Ramak is learning here from is that Hashem requires from us to, yes, hold Yisrael in your arms, carry them in your arms as a mother does to her newborn child, right? So one of the tzaddikim in our generation learns from this pasuk something very interesting. That sometimes parents feel like they have a challenge with their children that's beyond the scope of their abilities to deal with. I can't handle this child. I can't do it, right? And we're not judging anybody that gets into such a place, and everybody has their challenges. But the post from this, what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? You're telling me to hold him like a child, as if I gave birth to them. I didn't give birth to them. So what is Moshe saying? He's insinuating, if I had given birth to them, then I would have the strength to do it. Meaning, if Hashem gives you the child, He also gives you the strength to take care of them, whatever their needs are throughout their life, whatever they are, right? So maybe in between the lines here, what the Ramak is saying is that what he said Mefurash is that view them as if you gave birth to them, right? And then what's the way that you take care of a child that you gave birth to? You hold them in your arms, you cradle them, you take care of them, you care for them as if you're responsible for them. And this is how you should do. You should hold all of Am Yisrael in your arms, right? I'll give you a great way to start. Ready? It's an easy one. I'm going easy on you guys today. I'm not giving you strong, and you're not going to get graded on it. Have you ever noticed though that sometimes you're in shul, or you're like in a store, you're walking around, whatever, and people are kind of like with a straight face, and nobody's really like, right? Have you ever noticed that? So you be the one to smile. You be the one to bring some sweetness into that moment, right? Doesn't matter if the guy's the biggest Talmid Chacham in the world, and you feel like you're not, like, who am I to try to be the one that brings something here? No, you could bring a smile. You might not get a smile back, but that's a different cheshbon. That's his cheshbon. But one time, this is a great story. When I first got there at Yisrael, it was a Leil Shabbos before Kabbalat Shabbat, and I was at the Kotel, and I was standing. Did I ever tell you guys this story?
No.
No? Oh, this is a great one. This for my own life. I was standing like this close to the kotel, like right up to the kotel, and I must have had like a really heavy, sad face on. I was wearing a sad face at that moment, and this Breslever Chassid comes in between me and the kotel, facing me, like right here, nose to nose. So I backed up a little bit. I think my eyes were closed, and all of a sudden and he had this big, beautiful, infectious smile. Oh, it was a gorgeous smile. And he grabbed my shirt like this, and he grabs me, starts going, just like kind of rocking back and forth, smiling, like kind of like davening. And he says, Simcha is always in our hearts. Sometimes you have to work to pull it out, but it's always there, right? So I could have been, been crazy and gone, who knows, I don't know what. I'm sure not everybody would react like I did. So you never know. And so for the fear of how people are going to react, sometimes we play it safe and we'll all make the serious face like something's wrong, right? But it's a mitzvah. It says in Pirkei Avot, you have to receive everybody with joy. Another Mishnah says with a smiling face, right? So sometimes if I see somebody with a real sourpuss face, so I'll go to them. What's that about? Right? People. There's so much tension, especially everybody's addicted to the news, and we're hearing bad stuff all day long, and it's flowing through our minds, right? So one way that you can take responsibility for the world and bring goodness, let me bring a little simcha to your life. Let me bring a little simcha. It says in the Gemara that I forget which Amar was in the Shuk. It's a famous story. You guys have probably heard it. He was in the Shuk and he was there with Eliyahu and Avi. And he was a person who had Gilui Eliyahu. So he's sitting there schmoozing with Eliyahu. So he says to Eliyahu and Avi, among the people in the shuk here, are there any people here that are Bnei Olam Haba? Who are the people that are Bnei Olam Haba? The biggest tzaddikim. And he says, Hane tre badche. And those two jokesters over there, there were two jokesters. And they used to go around just bringing joy to people. Just, like, I don't know, comedians, I don't know exactly what you would, back then they didn't have those things. So there's two funny guys that used to go around bringing joy to people, making jokes and and bringing joy. Those are the ones, right? So so there you go. That's how you take responsibility for one little piece of homework. We're going to see who next week. You guys will report back to me, right? In your arms, you should take up like the shepselach, the baby sheep. And in his hug, he carries them. Alot yinahel, he leads the young, nursing ones. He's saying all different kinds of leadership qualities, responsibility qualities. Hanichachot yifkod, those that are forgotten, you remember. Right? A person feels like nobody is there for me, nobody cares for me, right? Or they're not noticed, right? The quiet ones, right? You notice them. Haneda yivakesh, the one that's lost, you seek him out. You try to find him. Hanishberet yapeh, the one that's broken, you try to heal. Whatever you can. Hanitzacha yichakel, and a need that one has, you try to sustain, you try to give it to them. Ha'ovdot yachzir, and those that are lost, you try to return them. V'yachem al Yisrael, and you should have just compassion for Am Yisrael. V'yisa b'seva panim yafot masa'am, and you should do it without a kvetch. Say, oh, gewalt. Am Yisrael is a hard nation. I want to tell you guys, Am Yisrael, after 2,000 years of Galus, it's not simple. It's not simple. We got a lot of things to fix over here. We got a lot of brokenness, right? It's the most we're Hashem's people, right? It's the most beautiful thing in the world. We got so much to do, and there's so many things that need fixing. So when you work with the community, at a certain point, you can start to get overwhelmed and have a kvetch about you. You know what that means, kvetch, right? How do you say? Who can translate? He does it with not a chip on his shoulder, but he does it like in a complaining way. I'm begrudgingly. Like I'm doing it, but I'm not. I complain about it also, right? No, you should do it with a smile on your face. Do it with tremendous compassion and tremendous chen. Like a compassionate Father, Helyon, like the exalted, compassionate Father Hashem, Hasovel Ko, who endures everything, right? Have we not been, chutzpahdik a little bit to Hashem in our lives? Have we not done, Hashem waited through us? Everybody's got the pictures of them when they're a teenager and they don't want to see that picture, like, oh, Gewalt, I dressed like that, I look like that, I spoke like that, everybody wants those pictures should be buried, right? Hashem was there loving us during those times, right? And all of our times that we make our mistakes. V'lo yibo, and we shouldn't grow tired, meaning we have to strengthen ourselves. V'lo yitalem, and we shouldn't look away and just not involve ourselves in the needs of Am Yisrael. V'lo yakutz, and not to be disgusted by the difficult needs. There's some difficult things out there. V'yinahel lechol echad kefitzoko, and you should guide each person that you're able to according to their needs. Eluhen midot hachochma, av rachman al banim. These are the midot of chokhmah, a compassionate father on his children. So that's the fourth one. Responsibility for Am Yisrael, with compassion. Thank you. And now the fifth and last one. He says, Od tzarich liot rachman prusim akol hanivraim. So last week we spoke about how we have a mitzvah to love our fellow Jew because it's our mishpacha, right? The mishpacha is one thing, and the rest of the world is another thing. But that doesn't mean, like a lot of people think that I have a mitzvah only to love Am Yisrael, and the rest of the world can, fall off a bridge. It's not Chalila a Jewish approach at all. And every human being was created in the image of God, and every single creation is created with the wisdom of God, and we have to have respect and awe and love for it. I told you before that Rav Kook said that how is it possible, talking about a healthy neshama, how is it possible for him not to have love for everything? How's it possible? Rav Kook couldn't even understand the option, right? But so now says the Ramak, Od tzarich liot. I think Rav Kook was really this paragraph is where a lot of things you see in Rav Kook. Tzarich liot rachamav tusim akol hanivraim. All your compassion, your love has to be spread out upon all of Hashem's creations. Lo yivazem v'lo yabdem. You shouldn't destroy them, and you shouldn't how do you say levazot? Insult them, you shouldn't belittle them, right? Belittle their importance. Because Hashem's exalted wisdom is spread upon all creations. Domem, Tzomech, Chai, Medaber. You guys have heard those 4 levels: inanimate objects, the plant world, the animal world, and the human world. Right? Those are the 4 levels of creation as we have them passed down in our Sefer Mekdoshim. I know in today's world of science, there's the world of crustaceans and the world of all the different categories. For us, it's 4 different categories: inanimate objects, dirt, rocks, water, air, plant life, animal life, and human life. And so every one of those we have to have respect for and compassion for. And this is one of the reasons why we have a prohibition of acting of being, what's the word I'm looking for, to food.
Gluttonous?
Not gluttonous. Not like if you have food that you're not eating, not to destroy it, not to, not just to not throw it away, but also to have honor for it. Like for instance, be respectful, right? What's the opposite of to not be respectful? Is yivazeh. But if, for instance, right, to be disrespectful, you have bread, right? When someone's making hamotzi, so we don't throw bread, right? And we don't put bread in a dirty place, and we don't just we don't use food for dirty purposes or somewhere. We have to honor it. Not like it's holy, in like a Sefer Torah or something like that. But we have respect for it, right? And this is the appropriate behavior for us, since chokhmah, everything is created with chokhmah, and Hashem, it's not just like like if you buy a tchotchke from little at the dollar store, the shekel store. Okay, that was also made with some thought. Here's the little remote controlled car, whatever. Somebody put some thought into that, right? Okay, whatever. But Hashem's chokhmah is in the creation, right? It's not just some guy that was trying to make $1, right? Hashem's wisdom is in everything. So Hashem wants us to not to belittle and not to be disrespectful of anything that's in this world. Like it says, everything was created with Hashem's wisdom. So too a man's compassion should be for everything in this world. I'll tell you what. Now I'm just remembering something from Moshe Feinstein, but I can't remember exactly what the words are. But you know how they've got these bug zappers?
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes bugs are a nuisance, and we have to zap them in malah. So especially for us that we're careful not to eat bugs. So bugs around food is a dangerous thing for a yid. But sometimes there's some places that they just have these zappers hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
And every now and again you're just like minding your own business, and all of a sudden, bzz, oh gosh, and then there's that smell. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right? So Rav Moshe Feinstein said something. So I can't remember exactly what he said, but something to the degree that a Jewish heart should feel a little bit of a pain when he hears that zap. Right? Oh, it's a little bug, or maybe a big bug. We should feel a little bit of a. Right? If not, we have to sensitize ourselves a little bit more. Right? That's what Hashem wants. Mitam zeh haya onesh Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and this is why. This is a famous story. You guys remember? Maybe for the story or not, that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was chavrusa with Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he was in the same generation. He was also a student by Rabbi Akiva at the very end of Rabbi Akiva's life. Make a long story short, when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son came out of the cave after 13 years of being in the cave, and they were on such a high spiritual level, so Rabbi Yehuda Nasi saw them, and he said, I'm jealous of them. He said, look what 13 years of suffering, when a person's not stam suffering, but 13 years of suffering, look what it could do for a person who's serving God. If he does it, like look at it. So he had a desire to have suffering for himself. But a tzaddik, we don't just bring suffering upon ourselves, right? So, but Hashem saw that he had a wish to endure that, so that he could also reach a higher level to serve God with love, even though you're suffering. So Hashem waited until there was a moment that according to Rabbeinu Kadosh's level, that he would find a way that it would be appropriate. And what happened? It's a story al yedei shelo chasal ben abakar shaya mitchabe etzlo. Namar lo zi lekach natzarta. There's a story that one time Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was walking on the street, and there was a shochet, a slaughterer that was taking a baby calf to be slaughtered, and it ran away from the slaughterer, from the shochet, and it ran underneath the coat of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi told it, Zil, he said, go. This is what you were created for. You were created to provide meat for men, right? So, such a terrible, heinous crime that he did, no. But Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, on his level, it was way below his level of the compassion that was expected from him, right? And then what happened? Ba'ulo Yisurin. Then he got 13 years of stomach pain. Stomach pain is considered, Chazal, the Gemara says stomach pain is the worst. Of all the different kinds of pain, you guys know stomach pain. It says that someone that endures chronic stomach pain, goes to Olam Haba. Right? It's the worst of the worst, the stomach pain. And he had for 13 years. So Rabbeinu was excited because now he finally got his wish, right? But I don't know how excited he was, once it actually came. But then Shehen Mitzad Din, so he got these Yisroel, he got this suffering, which comes from the side of Din, because he had behaved from the side of Din, right? He should go, right? Even though it's true that this calf was going, that's what this calf was for, right? But he should have had a little bit more compassion according to his level at that moment, right? But it had so Sheharei Rachamim Maginim Al Adin, because if a person has compassion, this is I have this underline and start in my Sefer, that when a person acts with compassion, it protects him from din. Meaning, even if I've behaved in certain ways in my life not beseder, and therefore, my account with Hashem, my spiritual account requires some type of fixing. But if I act with compassion, so it protects me from that, right? It heals things, it fixes things in that way. And so, since Rabbeinu didn't do that, וכאשר ריחם על החודה ואמר ורחמיו על כל מעשיו, כתיב ניצל מן הדין מפני שפורש אור החוכמה עליו ונסתלקו הייסורים. And then when did the 13 years end? That there was 13 years after that, the maidservant of Rabbi was cleaning out the house. She was sweeping or something, and she found a nest of baby mice. And she, like all good Jewish women, she let out a real loud scream. Probably it doesn't say that, but I imagine that she did. Maybe not. Maybe in the old days they were a little bit more, right? Tell you, sometimes you feel like who knows what just happened. Like a terrorist just walked in the door, and run downstairs. There's a spider this big, right? But anyway, so she let out a gashai, and she was ready to sweep them out of the house. Of course, you're not gonna let baby mice have a nest in your house, right? Who would do that? Rabbi told her, leave them. She said, what? Leave the mice in the house? He said, V'rachamav al kol ma'asav, just like we say in Ashrei every day. Right? Hashem's compassion is on all His creations. Hashem's mercy is on all His creations. And and so I don't know if she left him or not, but for Rabbi, at that moment, his compassion, that was it. He brought in the rachamim, and then it protected him from the din of what he had said 13 years before, and his stomach pain went away. Right? Why is that? Because the chokhmah, which is compassion, was brought into this world. Right? V'nistalku hayisurim. So too, in this way, we should not disrespect anything that exists. All of them were created with Hashem's wisdom. And you shouldn't pull anything, any plant, shouldn't uproot it unless you have a need for it. And you guys know the famous story with Rav Kook, right? Everyone knows the story.
I'm familiar. Yeah, I'm familiar. It's like picking
Right. Well, he was walking with Rabbi Levine, and they were walking and talking, and Rabbi Levine, without thinking about it, like all of us do, many of us do, he just picked a plant, a leaf off a tree or something, and he started picking at it or whatever, and then he's still talking, and he looks and he, where's Rav Kook? Rav Kook's back there, just looking at him, aghast. He said, how could you do that? How could you do that? Are you going to eat that leaf? We don't just take in the life of something. It's a leaf. How many is thinking in those terms, right? So this is where he got it from, right? This is where he got it from. Unless you have a need, don't do it. Don't do it. And you shouldn't kill any living thing unless you have a need. And if you have to kill them, you have to, right? So you have to choose them mita yafa. You have to give them the easiest death, the most painless death, right? Which as we know in our tradition is shchita, but with a sakin beduka, with a checked knife, right? You guys know that a shochet's knife has to be absolutely purely without any nicks in it, because if there's a nick, it hurts the animal. And a friend of mine was a shochet, and he learned shchita from one of the biggest rabbanim in America, and he came to Israel, and he got a job in a very baseline kosher slaughterhouse. I mean, not considered one of the best ones, the highest level, and of hashgacha, of kosher, and you sharpen your knife, and then you show it to the mashgiach, and then he lets you down on the floor to shech chickens. He sharpened for an hour, and the mashgiach said, no, keep working, keep sharpening. He said they spent the whole day sharpening, and he couldn't get it sharp enough that the mashgiach would let him shech.
So right? A little bit of vibration when you check up with your fingers is not acceptable.
Right, exactly. It has to be 100% smooth. And why? Because of this. Even when you're shechting it, what do you mean? In 2 seconds or in 5 seconds, the chicken will be dead, right? The extra 3 seconds makes extra difference? Yes. For us, it makes a difference. There should be the principle is there should be no extraneous suffering in this world. Right? On my clock, on my watch, right? I shouldn't cause it. Right? If I have to endure suffering, so I have to endure suffering. And that's my cheshbon with Hashem. I have to do tshuva, and I have to accept it with love and with simcha, all the different levels of that. But when it comes to me and how I relate to others, I shouldn't bring any suffering on anybody. Lerachem kol ma she'efshar. To be compassionate on everything as much as you possibly can. Sometimes you have to walk on the grass. we're not saying that you shouldn't live your life, and sometimes you need to eat, right? But once I was a vegetarian, and I was in Israel for a year, and my Israeli roommates couldn't stand it. They just had such a hard time with it, and I had all different kinds of reasons why I was a vegetarian. Mostly was just for health reasons, but I had this one guy who could barely speak English, but he was the cutest yid ever, and he, in his mind, I was doing it because I didn't want to kill animals, which there was a little bit there, but that wasn't my main reason. But that's the narrative that he chose, and so every time I would be cutting vegetables, he would walk over and he'd say, "Ow, ow, you killing the cucumber." Right? So sometimes you have to eat a cucumber, sometimes you have to eat a chicken, sometimes you even have to eat a sheep or whatever. You gotta. Sometimes you have to do, but it shouldn't be extra. It also should be a purpose. Now he's going to explain. He says, "This is the principle. Compassion and mercy on all creations, not to harm them in any way. And that's teluya and chokhmah. Zulati, unless, what's the exception? Lahalotam mimala lemala, to elevate them from one stage to another. You guys know that, like we said, inanimate objects to plant life, to animal life, to human life. So there's a principle that there's holy sparks in everything in this world, and the way that they get elevated is that they go from one level to another. So there's sparks in the water, and then the water gets feeds the plant, and then the sheep, right? So it went from inanimate to plant, and then the sheep eats the plant, and then the man shechs the sheep and eats the sheep, and then he uses that energy and that spark to serve God. So those sparks that were in the water now became elevated all the way to becoming just spiritual. They turned from physical to spiritual, right? Through that process. So sometimes you drink the water and you elevate it yourself, right? This is also, it's very connected to Birkat Ilanot. This is a very deep principle, right? In the month of Nisan, it's very deep things there. But he says that that's the exception. Is when we're elevating things. Mitzomeach lechai, from plant life to animal life. Michai lemedaber, from animal life to human. She'az mutar la'akor tzomeach u'lahamit achai. In those situations, then it's permissible to kill something that's alive in order for the use. Lachuv amanat lizakot, because you're doing something that it seems seemingly non-compassionate action, but it's really in order to elevate them, right? And there's a in the Zohar it talks about that each creation has a nefesh, it has a soul, and those souls are vying, they're fighting, so to speak, to be able to come onto the plate of a Jewish person who's going to make a bracha over them, right, and to elevate them. There's a story. There's a story. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's worth telling because the principle is true. That there was a Jew, believe it or not, that was in India learning meditation, and on the ashram. When I was in India, I met many of them, and he became very close with this one guru, and he was in the forest meditating for a long time, right? All these silent meditations, and then they came into the city, and he'd grown up religious or traditional, this Israeli, and they go to the city, and without thinking about it, they ate a fruit, and without thinking about it, he made a bracha. The Israeli made a bracha on the fruit. And his guru was looking at him with shock, and he said, "What did I do?" And he said, "What did you say? What was that incantation that you said before you ate it?" and he was embarrassed, because he was trying not to be what he was, He got caught, He said, "Oh no, it's just something from my childhood. I did it. I didn't even think about it." He said, "But what did you say?" He said, "I'll tell you the words." And he told him the words. He said, "What you accomplished, that's what I've been trying to accomplish my whole life." He said, "What?" He said, when a fruit is on the tree, it's connected to its source of life, it has a white aura to it, for those that can see auras. And then when you pull it off, so the white turns to black, has a black aura. And my whole life I've been trying to restore the white aura to a fruit or to some type of plant. And I've never been able to do it. And when you made that bracha, you did it. Right? So I don't know if it's a true story. It really could be a true story, right? But the principle is true. The principle is true. When you make the bracha, when you have the kavana, so you elevate it, right? Especially, this is why, have you guys ever heard how on Shabbos one of the most important foods to eat is a fish.
Yeah.
Fish on Shabbos. Ooh, Chassidim are wild about fish. Kabbalists wild about fish. There was a great Rebbe, the Ribnitzer Rebbe, who an amazing Rebbe. We don't have time for all of his stories, but he basically was like just a warrior in communist Russia. He didn't stop being a Rebbe. Even publicly, he would give bris milah. He did all kinds of things. Make a long story short, in his second marriage, his wife told someone. I heard this heard it from his wife, that he fasted the whole week. He would just drink, and it's called Tanit Hafsaka. It's called the whole week from Shabbos to Shabbos, and then on Shabbos, what would he eat? He would make a kiddush, a motzi, and he would have a fish, but a big fish. And she said he would eat the entire thing, the bones, the eye, the everything. He ate the entire fish, right? And that was his avodah. So he was an unbelievable, not didn't register in the plane of human being type of tzaddik. But what's the inyan with fish? We have a tradition from the Zohar, from the Rizal, that tzaddikim, when they have to mitgalgel, when they have to come back in a reincarnation, since they were tzaddikim, so they had they completed everything except for maybe one little knetch here and there. So how does Hashem bring them back? He brings them back in a fish, because fish have these beautiful tranquil lives under the water. It's givaldic, it's peaceful. I mean, maybe not everywhere, right? But and they come back as kosher fish, right? And so dafka to eat a fish on Shabbos, which is elevating not only the sparks of that, but it's also the soul of it. So lots of stories about it. But make a long story short, is that when even though we kill a fish or we kill the chicken, we're taking those sparks, and it seems like a cruel thing, the nations of the world are always coming after us against about shchita, right? Which is preposterous, right? But it's elevating it to the source of life. You're bringing back that white aura, so to speak, right? Just on that note, there's one of these 7 mitzvahs of the Bnei Noach is Ever Min Achai, not to eat a limb from a living animal, right? So whenever people hear that, they're like, who does that, right? Have you guys ever met anybody that just pulled off a pulket from a chicken?
No.
Right?
Yeah, like crab legs. They're doing it, right?
They take it when it's alive.
Yeah, they will just pull off the crab nippers and then throw away the crab in the ocean.
And he still lives.
Yeah, and then the crab will grow its legs, and then they will eat the legs.
And then they'll come back for the legs. Next week we'll be back for the other legs, right? That's it. That's every minute. That's every minute. Certainly. Nebuchadnezzar, Yimach Shemo, who destroyed the first Beit HaMikdash. So he once ate a live rabbit. He just ate it, a live rabbit. He just ate it, and one of the Jewish kings was there and saw it, and ended up being a big problem for us. But anyway, the point is that in the slaughterhouses, that the non-Jewish, non-kosher slaughterhouses, they give them injections before they it's like a conveyor belt. They're hanging upside down, and they give them an injection which makes them be still, like not move, and then they supposed to take off the head and then dismember, like kill them and then dismember them, and then they take the parts and they do whatever the process is. A lot of times the shot misses, but a lot of times the shot doesn't work. A lot of times the head doesn't come off, and they're dismembering them all the time, right? So nobody's coming after those organizations, but the kosher shechita they're coming after, because it's they come. But for us, kosher shechita is considered the livrolo mitayafa, which is the language of Chazal, to choose the best death, the easiest death, the most painless death, right? Anybody's ever seen, I didn't have intentions to speak about shechita today, but if anybody's seen a shechita, it's a very, very interesting thing. It's many times it's as if the animal just they don't put up a fight. They're just like peaceful. Right? It's a very, very interesting thing to see. I mean, if you have got the kishkas for it, some people, faint and stuff. You see all that.
Yeah.
But in any event, to summarize, like what we learned today, the last 2 points about chokhmah. One is to feel responsibility, compassionate, merciful responsibility for Am Yisrael, and to seek to give good and to bless them and to give and to help in any way possible. And the second one is to have compassion and mercy on all of Hashem's creations. And that concludes Chokhmah. Be'ez Hashem, I'll just say one word about next week. We're going to start Bina. Bina, for me, it's the hardest chapter in this Sefer. It's the most esoteric. So we're going to try our best. Bezat Hashem. But it changes directions a little bit in this Sefer. So it'll be interesting for us next week.
Yeah.